we making a lot of presumptions about behavior. Okay, so we think these obese people are lazy. Okay, they are gluttons. They lack self-control. They eat whatever they want. So what I'm addressing here is actually the stigmatization of obesity. We often make presumptions about what they're doing. And why is it stigmatization of obesity important? Actually, 52% of patients in a US poll said that they have experienced stigmatization from doctors more than once in their seeking of medical treatment. So, but what does that do to us? If we stigmatize patients, and it can be very subtle, it happens, I have that too. It often prevents us from really seeing the real problems behind them. And it could be very subtle. Maybe we speak to them less respectfully. When they don't lose weight, we get impatient with them. We think it's a waste of time. It shows up in our language too. Sometimes we use a disease to describe these patients, like we call them 肥仔. Do we call our leukemia patients the same, or the UTI patients or epilepsy patients the same? So we can start with thinking about ourselves, okay, and what language we use. Are there better terms than calling them obese or fat? Like you can terms like unhealthy weight or overweight, 或者超重或者唔健康嘅體重, rather than using terms that show stigmatization. And this is the one important key that we and policymakers need to have before we can do something meaningful for these patients. So actually there he is. Okay, he's actually working out at the gym. Now, so then I come to the outline of my talk. What is obesity? Where do we stand now? Why is it important to treat the child? And then how do I manage the child with obesity? And lastly, a short bit about the chronic care model. So what is obesity? To treat something, we need to know what it is, what we're actually treating. Actually, this is just something I read in the papers when I was preparing for the talk. What I can say to you is what obesity is not. And this guy, like the lay press, is getting the hang of what obesity really is. It isn't a calorie problem. It isn't a behavior problem. It isn't a matter of eating more and exercising less. It's actually a hormone problem. You know, as this guy says, it's a hormone problem. I'll explain to you in more professional language. So this is what this guy said. Because we're not treating as the right, we're not seeing it in the right way, and the conventional approaches don't work because we ask them to eat less, but we can only eat less for a short amount of time. And eventually the hunger gets us because it's biology. It's the biology that's affecting us. And when we use the wrong approach, and when it fails, we blame the patients for not sustaining it. So that's the problem. If we don't understand what it is, we blame the patients when it doesn't work. Okay. So if you don't take away anything today, I hope this will be the point that you take back. Obesity is a complex chronic disease of energy regulation that drives the body to defend a high fat mass set point. It's a complex disease. I will show you. It's a chronic disease. Okay, so as with other chronic diseases, we have like teams to manage them. We're really supportive of them. You know what's happening in the children's hospital. But do we treat obesity in the same category as these chronic diseases? It's a disease of energy regulation, I will tell you, and that drives the body to defend a high fat mass set point. So what is a fat mass set point? Like each of us has a fat mass set point, which I will tell you is determined by a lot of factors. So the fat mass set point and the regulatory mechanisms help us keep our body weight within a narrow margin of the fat mass set point. So now, you say, wow, this is very abstract. But just now, Dr. Chen had some Japanese cuisine clips shown to us before this lecture. And I want to tell you a very good example of how our energy regulation, our fat mass set point works. So a little over a year ago, all of us go to Japan, all right? And then all of us come back with gaining a few pounds more, all right? So, and then we come back, and then what happens if we continue to do what we usually do back in Hong Kong? What happens? We go back to our normal weight, okay? We don't carry the extra 2 kilograms from Japan with us. Otherwise, if we go to 10 trips to Japan, it will be 20 kilograms. We'll be carrying it. But that doesn't happen. That's because our body regulates our weight back to the fat mass set point. That's an evidence of how your body regulatory system works, just like how your body regulates sodium, cortisol, and everything. So let me show you how complex this regulatory system is. I try to simplify it like 10 times. So basically in our brain, there are 2 systems. The NPY system tells you you're hungry and you should eat. And the POMC system tells you that you're full. And these 2 systems receive peripheral signals from our gut, our stomach, our pancreas, and our fat cells. And there are lots of hormones that enter in this feedback system. So there are actually at least 8 hormones that feeds to the POMC that tells you you're full and you better stop. But it only takes one hormone, ghrelin, to tell your body to eat. Okay, so it tells you how powerful this ghrelin is. And besides all these hormones, our muscles, our bones, and the other body systems interact and talk to one another. And then we give this message to the metabolic part of our brain to tell us how our fat store is, whether our stomach is distended or not, and then tell us whether we should eat or not. And then the metabolic part of the brain then integrates signals from the cognitive and the emotional part of our brain. So the emotional part of our brain is very strong. That's why sometimes we eat without being hungry. And then you decide whether you should eat the apple or the donut. Right. So this system is complex, isn't it? And I'm just making this very, very, very simple. But what factors decide the fat mass set point? All right, so that is what we want to talk about. Actually, this is a lot of things, a lot of factors affect this fat mass set point. Let us talk a little bit about it. So our genes, we know genes affect us, but we know the genes are not the whole explanation, because the obesity epidemic has only happened the last 40 or 50 years, and the genes haven't changed much. So it's a concept of epigenetics, how the environment affects the gene expression in our body by the methylation of histones and everything. So the epigenetics affects our genes. And then our early life events, that's very important in utero. Whether the mother has diabetes, what the mother eats, whether the mother had stress during her pregnancy, and also other life events like after birth in the infancy period, what the baby eats, whether you said antibiotics, whether it was a cesarean section, everything. The early life events, whether there was child maltreatment, it still affects our metabolism and the hormones, and affects our body composition. So these are things that the child cannot change. And then there's biology. We all know. We give steroids. We give antipsychotics. We give a lot of medications, antidepressants, that cause them to put on weight. That's biology. Gut microbiome. We know this is an increasing research project. We know that is true. That obese rats, if they're given rats that have the gut, the fecal matter of rat from a thin rat, So the obese rat becomes thin and vice versa. So the gut microbiome, and that's affected by the antibiotics we take and the food, whether we have take processed food. So the gut microbiome. Psychology, we all know. Stress, some people say stress is transient diabetes. Okay, and boredom, loneliness, that affects how the body sets a fat mass set point. The obesogenic environment, we all know that the fast food, the processed food, the advertisements, the portion sizes that getting bigger and bigger, okay, and all these different types of sugared beverages on the market, in the supermarket, and then we nowadays we think, walking is something that poor people do. We take Ubers and taxis everywhere. We take lifts instead of going up the stairs. And of course, screens. The screens is the new thing. Behavior. The behavioral aspects also affect the fat mass set point. Besides the diet, there's also sleep. Sleep is very important. Our sleep duration, the timing of our sleep, the continuity of our sleep, the quality of our sleep. Okay. The circadian rhythm. It affects our ghrelin and our leptin hormones. Our activity, screens, and portion size, these are all behaviors. And a social cultural environment, the family. We often see families that don't eat together. Even they may have dinner, prepared, but like each have their dinner at the different times. Some families may not cook. Okay, they're too busy. They may be working, so the kid can only buy takeaway. It's very, very common. The income, okay, what our friends do, our belief system. So all these factors affect our fat mass set point. No wonder it's complex. No wonder it's a chronic. All right, so knowing this fact that it's an energy regulation problem, what does it mean for us? That means when we see a patient, don't look at them and tell them, you should eat less and move more. Because that's oversimplistic. You are not helping them. This is scratching the surface. Don't just target the behavior. Target the underlying forces that drives up the fat mass set point. Okay, that is important. The second thing is remove the blame. A lot of things they can't control. Okay. It's the biology, it's the environment affecting the biology, it's the behavior. It's a family, so remove the blame. Only then can you really help them in a way that's meaningful. So I thought Lee Kaplan, the president of the Obesity Society, said this very well. Overeating does not cause obesity. Obesity causes overeating. Okay. All right, so now where do we stand? What is the situation in Hong Kong? Now you may know this line graph. It shows the overweight and obesity detection rate of primary and secondary school students. And the information is from Student Health Service. Now, despite the limitations of the data that we can get there, we can still see some trends. Now, let's see the blue line. The blue line is primary school students. It's very interesting, isn't it? The primary students, they increase, and then from 2008 onwards, the incidence of overweight and obesity dropped. And that's partly due to what's the good work that I think Department of Health and Student Health Service has done. So that seems promising. But when we look at the adolescent, the secondary student obesity, we see that this trend has not decreased. You expect if the primary school students decrease, there would be a decrease also in the secondary school students' obesity rate, but it's not happening. So is that a true phenomenon? Actually, when I looked more into it, I find this is what happens in the US too. That's their graphs. Let's look at this graph. So the blue line is young children, 2 to 5 years. It's true that in the US too, from the NTAN's data, there's also a decrease in the obesity rate in young children. The mid-childhood, there's a stabilization of the obesity weight. But what about adolescents? It's still increasing. Okay. Let's look at the trends by severity also. We know that the obesity rate in the US has stabilized over the last years. But the problem is extreme obesity or severe obesity has not stabilized. It's kept on increasing. So this is something that we need to bear in mind with. Of course, this is a type 2 diabetes rate. Thank you to the data from our endocrine colleagues in Hong Kong that the type 2 diabetes rate, which parallels the body weight incidence of obesity, has increased to quite a significant amount. And of course, there's COVID. Okay, maybe you can resonate with these messages. Yes, many of us are stress eating and gaining weight in the pandemic, in the adults. And also, children and weight gain, and an epidemic during a pandemic. We all know that. The figures will not come out till the dust settles for COVID. We know this, you know. A lot of children's overseas are already saying that their patients are getting heavier and heavier. Okay. So let's come to the third question. Why is it important to treat the child now? And I think that is a very, very important question. Because, for two reasons. Because once it's established, obesity is hard to reverse. Okay? So very, very good studies, prospective studies following children into adulthood, longitudinal studies, shows that obesity has the highest tracking of all childhood risk factors into adulthood. Or 84% of obese children were obese as adults. 59% of obese children were severely obese as adults. And the severe obesity may be especially persistent. Okay, so we need to know that. It's going to stay if we don't deal with it. But what I find even more compelling is this study is New England Journal of Medicine, where they looked at they followed 4 studies, longitudinal studies of cardiovascular risk factors where childhood parameters were included. And they followed over 6,000 children over a mean of 23 years. And they found that overweight and obese children, there's 65 to 82% chance of them being an obese adult at 35 years. And what happens to these adults who were obese as children? They have 5.4 times of type 2 diabetes, 2.7 times of hypertension, up to 3 times of dyslipidemia, and 1.7 times of having an increased carotid intermediate thickness. This is at 35 years old. But if you look at these children, if they became non-obese as an adult, they have similar risks as persons who were never obese. Isn't that amazing? So here, our child actually has 2 roads to take. Okay? And now here is a window of opportunity for us to help them, to make a difference in their lives so that they as adults will have normal risk factors just like everybody else. So prevention is important, but there's a strong reason to treat the adolescent now. Now I show you these 2 graphs which I took from other speakers. This is an Australian survey of the incidence prevalence of overweight and obesity according to age. This I took in the obesity rates in Wisconsin, but I think the US figures are the same. We often only look at obesity, or the policymakers only look at obesity when we're here, when all the comorbidities arise and they're dying. Okay, but if we see when is the time where the prevalence of obesity increases the most, is young adults. The young adult age group is where the obesity rates increase the most. So we should treat it at the age where the most weight is put on. We should be treating it in here, not at the end, okay, where it's more difficult to treat and where the comorbidities are also more entrenched. Okay, so let's come to something more practical. How do I manage the child with obesity? All right. This is a course in itself, and I don't intend to let you stay till Guolin, all right? But I will just present some key factors or key points which I feel can be practical and change our practice. So we know that there's a tiered care in childhood obesity. It's also always by step. So there's lifestyle intervention and then the higher tiered care. So lifestyle intervention would be the cornerstone of primary care and secondary care. Secondary care meaning there's a more structured weight management program and a multidisciplinary team. And for the higher, for drugs, special diets or surgery, it would be the tertiary care with the pediatric weight management center. So I will focus more on the primary and the secondary care. And it's relevant to all of us who see children. We need to learn how to raise the issue of obesity and have some idea of how to manage it because it's just so prevalent. It's relevant to those who see the obese child at the asthma clinic, as well as as when you see an obese child in your epilepsy clinic. Okay, it's relevant. It's relevant to the nurse who kind of notices, or the physiotherapist, or it's relevant to all who see children. The second part about treating these children is we don't have to do it like Jiang Xiaoman, like from a really overweight person to a very slim person. We know that even moderate weight loss already has health benefits. Even 3 to 5% weight loss already shows improvement in glucose and triglyceride. And if you have 10% weight loss, that's definite. It's much more definite. There's better control in diabetes. And actually there's decrease in mortality, DM-related death and cancer-related death in adults. So you don't need to make them like a model sunshine, it's not. So let's look at 6 keys I've identified to lifestyle management in the tier 1 to 2 care. Firstly, we have to look at the why. What do I mean by that? When a patient comes to us, we often spend a lot of time taking dietary histories, counting their steps, and checking. But have we looked at why they're doing what they're doing? Because after all, behaviors is just a symptom. Okay? What they do is just a reflection of what drives them to do what they do. We need to know why they're doing what they're doing. Okay? Because if we're just focusing at the what, or what you eat, whether you exercise, as I said, you are just reinforcing the stereotype that obesity is just a matter of eating less and moving more. And we know from just what we presented just now, it's not the full story, it's just the superficial part of the story. We need to recognize the complex and diverse issues that drive the behaviors. Okay? And this is what we talked about. So you have to look at what aspect it is that drives the behavior, that drives the person having a high fat mass set point and have this dysregulated fat mass set point. So in effect, it is actually a battle of forces that influence the fat mass set point. And each patient is different. Each has its own factors. It could be, you can look at the abnormal dietary constituents. Why is he taking 腸仔 蛋 like every morning, or the 食公仔麵 like every morning? Is someone cooking at home? Okay. Do they have money problems? Why is he eating when he's not hungry? Is he lonely? Is he depressed? Is he procrastinating? Is it boredom? Like boredom eating is very common. I do it, but it's some techniques of how you can still limit your boredom eating. Then, what about the portion size? Why is he eating so much? Is it from habit? Is it because he's scared that he won't have it later on? Why is he taking the low mean during the morning snack? Is it purely to be with his friends? Are there other ways to be with his friends without eating the low mean? So these are things you have to look into. The unhealthy muscle. Why is he not moving? Is it because of his asthma? It's not under control. Is it because there's lack of safe space to exercise? Okay, sleep deprivation, we know. Why is he sleeping late? what's the family doing? We know chronic stress that is, as I said, it's associated with leptin resistance, insulin resistance. In short, is transient diabetes. Okay. Disrupted circadian rhythms. When does he eat? When does he sleep? We know late eaters will have more difficulty losing weight. So, is there a consistency in his sleeping pattern, his eating pattern? If it's like all over the place, I find it's very difficult to help these children. Is he on weight gain inducing medications? If so, can we change it to a one less so? So all these things we have to look into. All right, so this is looking at the why. Our second key is let patients recognize their own reasons for change. Now, we are not good at that because we are short of time. We like to give them directions. But the fact is, clinicians cannot prescribe or force or scare patients to change. It usually goes the other way around. We like to scare them, and usually it makes them more resistant to change. Because if I tell you, Dorcas, you should do this, you should exercise 1 hour a day, and then your initial reaction is, I can tell you 10 reasons why I can't exercise 1 hour a day, okay? So it actually reinforces resistance. But we can help patients look for their own reasons for change. Only then can they be motivated to commit to their own plans for change. Okay. I will have some illustrations later, but basically it involves 3 things. You want to explore their own values and goals and how that relates to their body weight. And you identify where their behavior is inconsistent with your own values, their own values and goals. And you try to work through the obstacles with them. So this is what we call a motivational approach, which is a new way of communication. It's a collaborative counseling strategy. What's a collaborative counseling strategy? Collaborative means that you're a partner. You're not the expert. You don't tell them what to do. It's non-judgmental and non-confrontational. It's an art of empathetic listening to their feelings, their strengths, and their doubts, and the art of asking the right questions. And all the while, your focus is to elicit change talk in the person. What's change talk? Change talk is any type of speech that lets them show an interest in changing their behavior. And one very powerful thing is to use the patient's own words to motivate them to change. Okay? This is the righting reflex. Resist the righting reflex, which is you should do this, you should do that. If you don't do this, you get diabetes, you will get blind, you will get... We've heard this before, isn't it? Resist it. Okay. Behavior change should be negotiated, not prescribed. So what questions I find very useful are, first of all, open-ended questions. So a few questions I will ask, or variations of them. How would your life be different if you get to a healthy weight? How has your weight stopped you from doing something you want? If you were to make a change, what would the benefits be? And these can get them talking. And then the second thing is reflective listening. As I said, listening not just to the words, but what's behind the words. And you identify the inconsistency. Although part of you know exercise may help with your weight, finding the time seems difficult. But it is something that could be good for you. You care about your health. You always end on the positive note. And the third thing, if you want to give advice, do this. You ask permission first. And that's what you elicit, provide, elicit. That's the model. So when you want to tell them something, you say, do you mind if I share some ways that other patients have found useful? And after you've said it, what do you think about it? Give them time to let you know whether it's good or it's not good for them. So, it will be more a negotiated thing. Now, let me give you some examples. So I had an 18-year-old boy who has been followed up by us since 10 years old, a BMI of 39, with fatty liver. He was seen once in our clinic. And the mother said, I don't know what happened. You woke him up. Right after you saw him, he started looking at what he's eating. He started doing jogging. So actually, his BMI decreased from 39 to 25.2 over 1.5 years. So 36% decrease over 1.5 years. That's almost like an invisible bariatric surgery done on him. Our second case, these are just some examples. So this is a boy who's been seen by us also since like he was 7 years old. And he had obesity, insulin resistance, and raised ALT. And when I look at the notes, every time it ends up with this sentence, poor motivation since 8 years old. I imagine like 呢個即係日本嘅必勝啦，必勝喺度，呢個必敗。And at the first visit, I started asking, okay, what do you think about the questions I asked? What do you think about your weight? What would it be like? What can you do that you can't do now if you have a healthy weight? And that's the first visit. And he said, I feel I'm not healthy. I've been drowsy in the daytime and I just don't sleep properly. I can't continue the same. That's what he said. Okay. And so, that's change talk. And then we talked about more, and then he said, oh, I don't want to have diabetes. So I said, why is it you don't want to have diabetes? And he said, well, I don't want to have diabetes as it will impair my freedom. So this was before 2019. So freedom was not a dirty word then. So, so we think that diabetes means blindness, renal failure, and whatever. But in his value system, it means freedom. And I can use this word, freedom, to help motivate him. So the same visit, he made plan to eat oatmeal and whatnot. And he did follow through with his plans. So he dropped 15% over 9 months. Another example, sometimes we have to motivate the family. So it's an 18-year-old boy, obese since 4 years old. We've been following him up. We gave him a lot of service like PT, conditioning program, dietitian, CP, even CP. And he came to me because he was referred by the school for my marathon program. At that time, his BMI was 42. Of course, he was not suitable to run the 10K marathon. He had OSA on CPAP. He had acanthosis nigricans. Hormone was 11.1, deranged liver function test. So we went through some motivational issues. And initially, he did have some success. The BMI did have some loss. And he told me father was cooking. The father teaches at the 中華廚藝院. He's a very good cook. And he was cooking salmon and chicken every day. So that's the drop. But then, subsequent to that, we were not achieving anything. Okay? We started the 牛腩煲, 羊腩煲, and then the 火鍋 and the 肥羊 and then 肥牛came. And then I was like, and I thought, this is getting nowhere. So I thought I must change my strategy. So I thought, father has a very important part to play in this. So one time I got father, we have teleconsultation. So we have a teleconsultation with the father and the child. So I started asking father, how has this weight affected your son? And he started telling me, whenever sometimes I take him up to the rooftop and we try to exercise together. And I find that he's got heavy breathing even when sitting down. He can't even do the things that I can do. He behaves like an 80-year-old man. Then I thought, wow, now this father is ready for change. See, we cannot make them change. We can provide the environment where they discover their own motivation for change. So I said, wow, you seem, you really want to help him, don't you? And I said, how can you do it? So he kind of faltered. And I said, of course I knew it was the salmon and the chicken, okay? But I didn't want to tell him that. I said, you did it before. How did you do it then? And then it was just a light bulb. And he said, 咁好易啫，我係咪煮三文魚咯，同埋雞咯咁。Okay, so that's him. Okay, even in COVID. So and then the child says, my inner heart really wants to lose weight. He tells me that. Okay, he says previously, superficially wants to lose weight, but now his inner heart wants to lose weight. Okay. So motivation is a very important aspect, eliciting it. And then we come to the messages. I think these are the simple parts. Okay, keep messages simple. All right, I use very simple behavioral messages. I use the half at my plate. I use water first for thirst. I use the hand as the portion size. I present the burger to him in terms of the minutes that he needs to jog it off. It's very simple. And then also this concept of NEAT, N-E-A-T. So increasing daily activity may be more important than formal exercise. Often, like the parents saying, "Oh, he's putting on weight. He's not losing weight because he's not exercising." There's much more to it. So NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It can be taking the stairs. It can be pacing when you use the phone. When you go on the internet, it can be cleaning the house, dancing in the shower. All these. Okay. Often when you wait at the lights, you just shift around. Okay. NEAT. And you can focus on activities with the family and the friends that the child enjoys. You don't necessarily need to make them exercise. Okay. So this is an example of NEAT, which Mandy. Yeah, this is. I thought it's very clever. He taught me. This is the example of NEAT when he plays on his mobile games. He tells me it only works with a certain mobile games. But that's an example. The fourth key is start small, one goal at a time. Sometimes we find that there's like so many things wrong with them. We want to just tell them all that is abnormal. But don't pull the carpet from their feet. If you want to change their world, what's their reaction? They'll be so scared. Okay, so just 1 to 2 goals at a time. Some simple ones would be limit sugar drinks, looking at the portion size or the snacks. Also, you don't just say take it out, but you give them options to replace it. Okay, what's the goal? You should exercise more. That's not a goal. You should jog more. That's not a goal. You should jog more, 30 minutes each time, 3 times a day, at the park nearby, with your brother. Okay, that's the goal. Okay. So always ask, what's likely to get in the way? When I first started it, I didn't do this. And once I asked a kid, adolescent, just like do the jumping jacks. Just do jumping jacks at home, because jumping jacks, I thought, everybody can do jumping jacks. And the next time, he didn't do jumping jacks. And I said, why can't you do jumping jacks? Because the tong fang he stays in is too small that they can't even do jumping jacks in the tong fang. Okay? That's why. So you always ask the obstacles. Celebrate success. Okay. Be their cheerleader. Believe in them. Okay. This is my virtual high five, because we have the Zoom teleconsultations. My virtual high five to a kid who managed to decrease 4 chapatis a meal to 2 chapatis. Okay. And when you see the change, be specific to praise them. You ask them, let's point out what you've done to make this change, to properly recognize you for the great job you've done. Okay. A word of caution here. Sometimes I will hear saying, oh, wow, and the change is not on weight. The change is when they change their behavior. That's when you celebrate success. Okay. Not so much their weight. Sometimes I hear, 哇，你好乖仔啊，你輕咗。But I want to veer away from 呢個好叻或者好乖。Wow, you did it. Wow, it's so successful. 即係你有成功咯。You've stepped out from yourself. That's how you should cheer them on. So in case you think, 哇，你即係齋講啊，我冇時間喎咁。So this conversation I recalled, and I want to illustrate to you. If you do it right, it may not take a lot of time. Okay, 15-year-old boy, followed since 12 years old for severe OSA on CPAP, had 6 months of NIB rate reduction program. But he is here, 38 fatty liver hypertension. First visit, we had a simple goal: cut sweetened drinks, so he succeeded. But the following, he was not getting anywhere, no further improvement. So body weight remained at 36.4, so it's not good enough. So, and then we had a teleconsultation. And then father, in the teleconsultation, picked up a empty bag of chips in front of me and said, 醫生你睇一睇啊，佢就係咁樣，所以咧就唔到。咁 at that moment 咧 I could feel there's a black dog， 一隻黑狗同隻白狗喺我個腦嗰度。Because 個黑狗咧就想話，我搞錯你，我真係唔想睇你啦咁。咁個白狗咧就 OK，let's remember what's behind it. Let's believe in them. Let's talk about it. So I try to revisit. What would be some benefits of a healthier weight for you? 嗱，嗰陣時佢已經係 hypertension 同埋CPAP 啦。OK， 佢話 so that I will have less illness. OK， how has your weight？ 你個體重你 so far 你冇病，咁而家你影響咗你，而家點影響咗你 so far 影響咗啲咩啊？我話暫時冇影響喎。嗱 ，so this is 唔好 argue with them. All right, don't argue with them. Resist the righting reflex. OK， 咁我話你話暫時。係咪你覺得你遲啲咧會影響你個身體啊？咁佢話 I guess so， 即係佢咁啦，佢啦。咁我想 elicit change talk， 佢講 I guess so 咧，其實你叮一叮，可能有啲嘢啦。OK，some change talk。So I said, what do you see as the main barriers to you achieving healthy weight？ 其實最困難係乜嘢咧？咁佢話俾我聽，我 problem 係 too much snacks and lack of exercise。咁我就用咧。empathetic reflection， 哇，真係好難啊！你真係去 refuse this snack 真係好難。咁佢話咩咧 ？Not really 喎，佢話。咁我話嚇，咁呢個 change talk 咯。佢話當我個 sister return 咗 from 香港咧，其實咧佢嚟即係因為疫情啦，佢而家翻嚟香港，佢咧成日都拉我咧出去嗰啲shops， 咁佢咧就買咗就食啦。其實 both of us shouldn't eat， 我哋兩個都唔應該講，都唔應該。So let's change talk, OK? So 我話 see, how could you solve that? 咁即係 ask for the patient's own solution。咁佢話 I need to talk to my sister。我哋都唔應該去啲 snack shop 啦。其實阿媽都成日叫我哋唔好嘅。咁但係每一次咧，我個 sister 咧都話誒最後一次咁。So 咁咧 I want him to expand on his change talk. Wow, it takes a lot of resolve to talk to your sister's affirmation. So next time 你 pass by 個 snack shop， 你個 sister 話誒最後一次，咁你會點做啊？咁我諗一諗，我叫佢唔好入去咯。咁我話哇 I think you're helping your sister a lot too. That's affirmation. OK。咁然後 I go one step further。你通常幾時食 snack 㗎？咁我話 open usually when I'm bored, sometimes when I'm hungry。咁我就 affirm 佢，哇！你好清楚你自己喎，你知道原來你係 bored 唔係 hunger 去食 snack 嘅喎。你喺邊度擺你啲 snack 㗎？佢話喺我個櫃桶。我話喺櫃桶咧，可能係咪好易攞佢出嚟咧 ？What can you do to help that? See, I don't tell them what to do. I ask them for their solution. I can put them in the top shelf of the kitchen where it's hard to reach. 咁佢話 OK， 咁 what else can you do when you feel like having a snack？ 咁我可以咧飲下水 and wait and see if I'm bored。定係 hungry， bored 我飲水 OK 啦 ，hungry 我就係仲想食嘢。咁 what can you do if you're really hungry? Take an orange。咁 what can you do if you're bored？ 咁係諗咗耐。咁我話 Do you mind if I share what's been helpful to others? And we had a discussion。OK， 咁咧就 and then 我話 let's summarize。嗱呢啲咧你 part 2考試嗰啲嘢咧，其實唔係假嘅，係真嘅，即係真嘅嚇。Let's summarize what we talked about。咁我話 Would you like me to summarize or would you like to do it？ 咁佢話我去 summarize。咁佢講verbalize all we discussed。OK， 咁嗱，咁呢個咧 actually 咧，我而家喺呢度嘅啫，我而家打橫行咗嘅啫。OK，but 咧佢已經係少咗好多 snacks 噶啦。嗱呢個 COVID 時候啊，我話俾你聽，呢個係現在㗎。咁佢有一啲 low fat yogurt for snacks。咁佢話而家咧，我最大問題咧喺屋企好 hea 咁 OK 咁 so 咁佢要再俾啲 idea。So the next time we will concentrate is 好 hea, what you can do. So how much time did I take? I think less than 10 minutes. Okay, so I think 7 minutes we did that. So it's not impossible to do this, but we have to try to look behind the whole superficial overeating and undermoving. All right, okay. 另外呢個 very important sign, relapse is biology. 好多時咧，佢哋輕咗之後咧會重返 ，and then we blame them. 我哋話你梗係講少咗俾我聽咧，冇理由食咁少咧都仲重嘅。I want to tell you, there's a biological response to 10 to 20% weight loss. 第一，呢個係 studies 嚟嘅，係你個 grade， 如果你係輕咗之後咧，即係如果你有係個 Australian 個 weight watch the biggest loser 或者美國嘅 biggest loser， 啲人咧點解會之後重翻咧？第一佢個 ghrelin，there's increased ghrelin 嚇嗰個 hunger hormone，there's decreased satiety hormones，OK， 同埋咧 the thing is 佢個 basal metabolic rate will decrease for every kilogram weight loss. There's 20 to 30 kilogram basal metabolic rate decrease. So if you have lost 20% weight loss, 你個 actually 咧，你個 basal metabolic rate decrease 15%. That means you have to eat 50% less the food that you normally eat just to maintain that weight loss. So obesity is a chronic complex disease. Don't blame them when they start to regain their weight because it's biology. Help them. Slip-ups are opportunities to learn to do better next time. And because relapse is biology, they need ongoing partnership and support, not blaming. Okay, so just very quickly, tier 3K, I'll just flip through it. If you want to ask questions later, so there's anti-obesity drugs. There's more and more obesity drugs. The latest one is liraglutide. It's being approved to use in children. And then bariatric surgery, okay. And then bariatric adolescents show decreased heart disease risk. So there's like lots of methods for now that is available for children. I want to end by having this community component mentioned to you because we talked it's a chronic disease. Chronic disease need chronic care model. Okay, chronic care model. There's the family, there's how we care delivery and community systems. DIAS shows this integration of clinical and community resources for the prevention of management of obesity. We need that, the community component, for a successful, step down or好乜嘢都好係一個 because it's a chronic disease, that you need to support them for long periods. So I want to last mention I had this program with the community since 2013， 呢個叫 Step Up 一個 marathon training program 係同屈臣氏水Watson Athletic Club YMCA 浸大啲同學一齊做，咁就做咗6年啦。咁 we train in the 即係喺個運動場嗰度 train 啦，又唔使錢嘅係咪？咁 and then these two are BU students 係所以咁你知啦 ，I can never be like that， so 一定唔會影響到佢去運動啦，係呢啲 young people 先可以啫。And then we do other things like sometimes we have Christmas picnics instead of Christmas party, Christmas picnics. The purpose is to show them how we can eat properly, prepare food and prepare properly. So and then like each year the 10K the icing on the cake is we get to go on the stage. Okay， 頒獎場上咧，我哋可以影大合照咁。So we did it for 6 years, and I combined the program, the result. So totally we had 106 who come through this. Individuals who have come through the 6 years, and then lost weight 咧都有40幾%，有啲係lost 大過15% 個 weight loss。咁當然有一啲係 gain 咗 weight 啦，不過係少數。But it's not a clinical program， 所以唔係so 即係我唔係好多啲，我唔係逐個睇，唔係每個 patient 睇咁。But you know this the top male loser 咧就係減咗20.6%， 咁 top female loser 咧都係減咗好多。咁佢哋咧跑咧都唔弱㗎嚇，53分㗎個10K 快過我呢個女仔嚇。咁 so I just show you this young man。咁before he joined us, he BMI 29.3， and 呢個佢就係 之後嘅，咁係BMI 24.2 ，OK lost 17%。But what's more, he brought his brother to us。咁呢就叫 brother。咁之後就 join 我哋呢個 program，BMI 28.1。咁咧就後尾就而家跌到 BMI 23.5。But more than that， 咁佢減得咁好，咁佢就同我講：，我而家咧叫緊我媽咪咧運動同埋食得好啲。OK， 媽咪咧52歲 ，the end。So I hope this is not just an individual. It's it can have lots of benefits to the whole family. 咁呢個係即係廣華醫院同浸大合作，俾你睇因為其實咧 ，we are not just talking about health。we are talking about
6個月體重都冇反彈，部分人更加完成咗香港馬拉松10公里賽。
有冇聲？
以前咧就喺學校嗰陣啦，就成日俾人話係我好肥啊，俾人起埋花名啊咁樣。我覺得其實有時候好唔開心嘅，同學都有讚我話：你瘦咗喎，你靚仔咗好多喎咁樣。我覺得開心之餘，同埋俾翻少少自信心俾我。同埋今次完成咗呢個10K 之後，我覺得原來咩都可以有可能發生嘅。
負責計劃嘅醫生話：呢一種社區同醫療機構合作嘅方式，因為有團隊同埋導師嘅支持，相比傳統嘅診療，更加能夠有效鼓勵到青少年維持健康嘅生活方式。無線電視記者陳日雅報導。
So I like the last bit。我跑咗10K 之後，咩都有可能。So two roads diverged in the wood. Robert Frost and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. It can make a lot of difference to their health, their self-esteem, and to their view of life. So the summary, obesity is a complex chronic disease of fat mass set point regulation. Don't blame or label them. Treatment must target the biological, environmental, and behavioral factors that drive up this set point. The longer the exposure, the more difficult it is. So early recognition and management is important. And it's relevant to everyone who works with children. A new way of communication is needed to help patients find their own reasons and own lasting plans for change. The body's biological resistance to long-term weight loss means there should be ongoing partnership and support. And clinically, with the adoption of motivational approaches, medications and surgical procedures, we may be able to help children with obesity take the road less traveled by. But, of course, policy support and integration with communities' resources will greatly facilitate this journey.